Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to discuss one of the recent experiments I did, and it was about the listening section of the test. In this experiment I tried to find out how just doing listening would affect the rest of the sections so that I could find out how different questions in listening affect the performance in other sections. And I have come up with some interesting results which I'll be sharing with you in this video. Let's get it started. We have been offering online and face-to-face classes to people all over the world, and we are based in Melbourne. If you're interested in learning more about our classes or courses, please click on the link given on the screen and we'll happily help you. Okay, regarding what we are going to discuss today, listening is the last section you do in your test. And before this section, you also get a chance to take 10 minutes optional break. Most of the times, by the time you reach listening, you're already tired and perhaps you cannot concentrate that much. Although this is one of those sections where you have to concentrate a lot because you don't get a second chance to listen to the recording, based on which you will be asked questions. So it's really important that we learn the proper strategies for listening, as well as find out which question types in listening are more important. In order to do this, we have to look into two different things. First is which questions are important for listening, and second is which questions in listening can be important for other sections, namely writing and reading. That is the reason why I did this experiment. In this experiment, what I did was I skipped the rest of the sections except listening. And when I did listening, I made sure that I answered all the questions correctly. Because these were the questions I had already done, so I knew the questions, I knew the answers to these questions for sure. So it was not difficult for me to find the answers. And the only reason I was doing this was to find out how this would impact the other sections of the test. So let's just start with a few important discoveries I made through this. The first important thing that I found after doing this experiment was listening itself gets only around 50 points from listening, which means the rest of the points in listening comes from somewhere else. Now, if we think about the other sections which can contribute to listening, of course, there is only speaking. Because speaking is the only part where we need to listen to something, and because listening is an assessment of our ability to listen to the content and analyze, interpret, and respond to the given task. That's why when we are doing the speaking and when we are listening to the recording, we are being analyzed, we are being assessed for our listening skill as well. And that's why the questions like repeat sentence, read a lecture, and so answer questions are important for listening. And their importance is quite apparent from this experiment because you can see that I got only 51 in listening. That means rest of the points, which is 39 points, will come from speaking. Now, I don't want you to think about this in absolute numbers. What I mean by that is, don't think like you will get 39 from speaking and 51 from listening. What I want you to think is around 50% of your score can come from speaking, or in other words, if you want to get good score in listening, you definitely have to score better in speaking as well. Now, there are a lot of people who will tell you that you can score better in speaking by speaking faster or by using some silly tricks. But what I suggest is when you are using these tricks, be sure that this will not hamper your performance in listening or even in reading, because speaking is equally important for reading too. That's the reason why when you are doing speaking, you should be careful about the impact of the tricks and strategies you are using on other sections. Now, coming back to listening, as I said, you get 51 points in listening from listening itself, or you can say that around 50% or slightly more than 50% of your score in listening comes from listening itself. So if you look at the questions we get in listening, which questions are important then? Then, based on the countless past experiments I did and my own experience and observation, what I can say is summarize spoken text, then fill in the blanks, highlight incorrect words, and write from dictation. These questions are the most important questions in listening. Or I can tell you confidently that even if you ignore the rest of the 4 questions I did not mention, you will still score more than 79 without a problem, and there are thousands of students who will tell you the same. I'm not saying you should skip those questions. What I'm saying is you should manage your time in such a way that you don't spend more time on those 4 questions and have enough time left for doing dictation, which comes at the end. Why? Because dictation is one of the most important questions in your exam. Why is it so? Because if you look at the scorecard on the screen right now, what you'll see is I have scored 58 points in writing just by doing listening. That is quite interesting. And the reason for that is you are getting less for writing from writing itself, and almost 2/3 of your score in writing actually is coming from listening. And if you look at the questions we get in listening which affect our writing, then they are summarized spoken text, fill in the blanks, and write from dictation. So what this test tells us is, if you want to do better in writing, you have to do really well in listening, especially in filling the blanks, summarize the spoken text, and more importantly, in write from dictation. Now, there is one more question in listening, which I said is important, that is highlight incorrect words. You already know the importance of this question in listening, but this question is also important for your reading. And that is the reason why, if you don't do that well in this question, you may have problem in your reading. And there is another question in listening that can have impact on reading, and that is highlight correct summary. Now, if you look at my reading score, you can see that I scored 13 in reading just by attempting listening. What that means is, if I do well in listening, and if I don't miss any questions in listening, I might get up to 13 points in reading. And that can be quite significant for people who are looking for 79 and above, because you can see that without these 13 points, you'll have only 77 points left in reading. So if we put all of these things together, what will be the most important points for us to consider? The first is your performance in listening. That means the score you get in listening is reflection of your performance in speaking and listening together. Almost half of your score in listening is dependent on your performance in speaking. That is the reason why when you are doing speaking, do not use any stupid tricks which may increase your speaking score by compromising your score in listening. Second important point, listening is more important for writing than for any other section. It is more important for writing than writing itself is. As you can see, 2/3 of his score in writing comes just from listening, and mainly from the questions like summarize spoken text, fill in the blanks, and write from dictation. So when you are preparing for your writing, or if you are struggling in writing, you must learn how to do well in writing by performing well in these 3 questions. Or in other words, if you want to get good score in writing, make strategies to perform better in summarize spoken text, and fill in the blanks, and write from dictation. Learn what are the important things. Learn the important ideas and skills you require to perform better in these 3 questions, or the tips and tricks you require to answer these questions without a problem in the test. The third important point is listening can also be important for reading, although its importance for reading is comparatively less than its importance for writing. Still, you will get around 13 points in reading. Still, you will get around 13 points in reading from your listening. So the questions in listening, such as highlight incorrect words and highlight correct summary, can have impact on your reading score. But between these 2 questions, I would spend more time on highlight incorrect words, as its relative importance is more than highlight correct summary. So overall, if you are thinking about the important questions in listening, they are summarize spoken text, fill in the blanks, highlight incorrect words, and write from dictation. In order to score better in speaking, in order to score better in listening, you should do better in speaking. And if you do well in listening, then it will reflect on your score in writing as well as in reading. I think the insight I got from this experiment actually said the same thing that I have been telling for quite a long time based on the other experiments I did in the past. For your information, I keep doing this kind of experiments after every 2-3 weeks just to see if there has been any major updates in the algorithm. And based on these experiments and based on all of these ideas and experience, I have designed our online course where you will be able to watch videos which will tell you how to tackle different types of questions and be able to answer the questions in the way Pearson expects you to answer. And many students have already benefited from this. You can get more information about this on our website. And if you think that this video was helpful to you in any way, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Until our next video, have a good time and all the best for your upcoming exam.